International flights across the world and across the continents will eventually resume back to their full potential, but whenever they do, there will probably still be a critical missing link. Normally, there are transcontinental flights every single day that connect North America, Europe, Africa, and Australia to every other inhabited continent in the world. But there still isn't a single direct commercial flight being offered from Asia to South America.
The first thing to look at in this video is the map projection that the author is using. We all know that the Mercator projection is the incorrect projection of the continents.
Ever seen a map that looked like this before? How many of you have ever seen this map?
Seen that map.
Yeah. Isn't this the map that you use K through 16 in the United States of America? Now, folks, look at this map. According to your social studies teacher, what is the equator?
Right
An imaginary line where?
Yeah.
Around the center of the Earth. Then if this map is correct, then the equator must be here, and Chicago has a tropical climate. Now, folks, this is the map that we use in the schools. Look where the United States is, in the middle of the world, right? Now, here's the USSR, which is no more, of course, Mongolia, China, Africa, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Now, look over here. USSR, Mongolia, China, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Two Indias here. We have two Indias. Did you know that? Now, people, this is a flat-out lie. Look at the size of Greenland and the size of South America. According to your social studies teachers, what were continents? Largest land masses on the face of the Earth, right? Now, do you know the continents? Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, Europe, North America, and South America. Did I say Greenland? Well, Greenland isn't a continent, but it's a huge landmass according to this map, right? The map is a flat-out lie, people. If you read the legend on the map, here it says, in fact, South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland.
Why are we changing maps?
Because, CJ, the Mercator projection has fostered European imperialist attitudes for centuries and created an ethnic bias against the Third World.
Really?
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
Yes.
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes?
Here we have Europe, drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
I'm glad you asked.
And for this presentation, we're going to use the Alexander Gleason's Flat Earth map created in 1892. Once you look at the Flat Earth map, you will understand why those flight routes make no sense or cannot be explained if you look at the Mercator projection.
And there never has been either. Even after the COVID crisis is over, the only way from one continent to the other is through a series of convoluted connecting flights that will take you to another continent first, and likely take you over 24 hours to complete.
Well, looking at the Flat Earth map, you can understand why these flights from Asia, especially now repatriation flights from Asia to South America, had to go the way it went. As for example, these flights from Wuhan to Colombia on the globe, it's just a short straight across the Pacific with a stop in Hawaii if necessary. Instead, they came all the way from Alaska, stopping in Alaska, then Minnesota, and then Colombia. The reason they did this is because the Earth is flat and there is no other way. The layout of the continents does not favor a direct flight between these two regions. Look at, for example, this flight from Rio de Janeiro to Sydney that happened in 1988 when the Brazilian soccer team, national soccer team, went to play in Sydney. This is the route that the players had to take from Rio to Los Angeles, all the way in the Northern Hemisphere, and then down to Sydney, Australia. But if you look on the Flat Earth map, you can understand exactly why the stop had to be made in Los Angeles, because they are in opposite directions when you look on the flat Earth map.
So, what gives? South America is home to 424 million people, or about 5% of the human species, while Asia is home to 4.56 billion people, or about 58% of the human population. China is already the largest single aviation market in the world.
Here's a simple layout of undersea cables. It's better explained on the flat Earth map, very similar to the flight routes, also better explained on the flat Earth map.
Pre-COVID, only 4 Latin American countries maintained flights to the Asia-Pacific region: Cuba, Mexico, Panama, and Brazil. These 4 countries collectively maintained 22 weekly flights to either China, Japan, or South Korea, and most of them had layovers.
Layovers in North America, Canada, US, or sometimes Mexico, due to the fact that the Earth is flat, and that's the layout of the continents. There's no other way. There's no aircraft that can fly that long, except if it's an extended range aircraft. But other than that, those flights have to stop in North America due to the layout of the continents when you look at the correct map, which is the flat Earth map.
Hainan Airlines has a route from Beijing to Mexico City with a layover in Tijuana. China Southern has a similar route with a layover in Vancouver that's set to be discontinued, while Air China has flights to Cuba with a layover in Montreal, another one to Panama with a layover in Houston, and another one to Sao Paulo with a layover in Madrid, while Aeromexico has direct flights from Mexico City to Tokyo and Seoul. That's pretty much it, and the only direct flights go into or out of Mexico, not South America. The 2 primary reasons for why that's the case are geography and technology.
All those flights are better explained on the flat Earth map, as you can see here, especially the flights from China to Cuba with a stop in Toronto. It makes no sense on the globe Earth, but when you look at the flat Earth map, you can understand why those flights make more sense on the flat Earth map, because the Earth is flat. Here you have a closer view of all those flights he mentioned. Especially look at this Beijing to Cuba with a stop in Montreal, in Canada, or Toronto. It's way better explained on the flat Earth map. It makes no sense on the globe Earth or on the Mercator projection. Now, everybody had problems with the Mercator. I showed a couple videos ago how during the Second World War they needed a reliable map. Reason why they came up with the projection, the azimuthal equidistant projection during the Second World War, because the globe wasn't working. The Mercator map wasn't working. So they came up with several different printing of the flat Earth map during the Second World War, as we see here in this video. During the Second World War, you see lots of flat Earth map coming to light, being published, because they could not count on the globe or the Mercator.
Everything started to change in the mid-20th century. There was a world war, and more airplanes were being used than ever before. Editorials published in the New York Times in the 40s called for the Mercator to be discarded and reminded readers the grossness of its errors should not be forgotten. In a series of orthographic maps in 1942 and 43, Fortune magazine declared the Mercator is no map for global war, and it was a dangerous map to use in studying global strategy. An expose on cartography life published around the same time called the Mercator a mental hazard in a war that is plotted on great circles across the land and sea and through the air.
Geographically speaking, Latin America in general is the furthest global region away from Asia, and South America specifically is quite literally the furthest place away from Asia that you can get to on Earth. South America and Asia are essentially antipodes. Based on this map, you can see that Argentina and Chile are roughly opposite of Mongolia and China. Taiwan is opposite of Paraguay, the Philippines are on the other side of Brazil, while Indonesia is opposite of Colombia and Venezuela. You can also see that Mexico is the closest Latin American country to Asia, which helps to explain why it's the gateway to Latin America from Asia. Currently, the longest commercial flight is the one between Singapore and Newark that takes 18 hours and 25 minutes to complete and covers a distance of only 8,285 miles.
Flight New York to Singapore. I have made a video back a few months ago. This flight makes more sense when you look at the flat Earth map. And also I want to point out the abyssal plain, which are huge flat regions under the sea, which demonstrates that Earth is not a globe. And you can see on the arrows pointing the flight from Singapore to New York flies west of the North Pole, and going back from New York to Singapore, it flies east of the North Pole because there is a jet stream there that's called the polar jet stream, and the flights go along the jet stream.
Last year in 2019, Qantas achieved the world record for the longest flight ever taken by a commercial jet aircraft. They flew a Boeing 787-9 from New York City to Sydney non-stop over 19 hours and a distance of 10,066 miles.
Okay guys, here is looking at the flat earth map from the above. So this is the flight from New York. I'm working with two possibilities. It could have flown straight over Alaska towards Sydney, or these flights could have taken some advantage of some sort of wind that goes around here, flown this route right here towards Sydney. Either way, this flight flew north of Hawaii. Hawaii stands right here. Just as at least Qantas released a truthful flight plan showing the flights going north of Hawaii. So, and since the Earth is flat, there's no curvature, nowhere to be found. Ocean's floor is flat. There is only one way this flight could have taken place, going from New York to Sydney. It's either flew this blue line over Alaska, or the red one over the northwest coast of the US, probably taking advantage of jet stream, then toward Sydney. Here we see abyssal plains cover 79% of the ocean surface. 71% of Earth's surface is covered by water. So since the abyssal plains are basically flat land under the oceans, and the oceans cover 71% of Earth, so it's pretty much plain everywhere. And this sign here saying abyssal plains, abyssal plains, abyssal plains, and right here it's just like the professor from Yale University was explaining.
There's a section of abyssal plain, a kind of flat-lying section. So now here's the whole world ocean, and the color scheme is not quantified on here, but I can tell you basically what's going on. All the deep blue is abyssal plain, about 5 kilometers deep. And you see it a lot of places.
But Qantas did a lot to this flight to make it more possible. Passenger and baggage loads were both restricted in order to control weight. So there were only 49 people on board that flight, including all of the passengers and crew. And it still wasn't enough to cover a reasonable flight between two major airports in Asia and South America. So that's effectively why no direct flights exist between the two continents. They're too far away, the technology to fly that far without refueling isn't there yet, and the infrastructure in a lot of places is simply lacking.
The reason there are no flights between those places is because Earth is flat and the layout of the continents make it impossible. If the author of this video, if he only looks at the flat Earth map, he can understand why there are no flights over these regions. Take care guys, see you next time. Bye-bye.
What it is an airplane that shows what future air travel may look like. Yes, it's almost as wide as a football field is long with just one seat. But just as the Wright brothers couldn't carry passengers, Solar Impulse represents the first steps in solar-powered flight. And to prove its potential, they began flying it around the world, from Abu Dhabi last year, with stops in India and China, then across the vast Pacific. Remember, it has no fuel. It then was on to the United States, hopscotched across America, powered only by the sun. And now it has crossed its last ocean, the Atlantic. Not much further to go.